Okay, so hello everyone who's here and anyone who's watching later. Today is going to be a bit of an overview of the huge things. April's just this incredible month of astrological happenings, and what I'm going to try and do is give you a really simple overview of that and the kind of background of the energies that we are working with. And there's just been like incredible synchronicities this week around roses and inner authority and all kinds of things that were actually mentioned this morning in the morning meditation in that I think it's the 19th Puri that Tara's been reading from, and it was like, wow, it feels like all these worlds colliding, giving the same kind of information on how we can manage in these chaotic, crazy times that we're living in. So, I want to begin first though with an attunement, because even if you don't get what I'm talking about in the mind from the astrology side, the attunement gives an experience of what this energy is like that we're in. So I invite you to just close your eyes, and we'll just begin by taking a few deep breaths together. So breathing in through the nose, and out through the mouth. And in through the nose. And out through the mouth. And in through the nose. And out through the mouth. Just taking time to come really present into your body. Feel your seat, feel your feet on the earth. Feel your spirit living in your body in this extraordinary journey of life and being human, and all the challenges that experience brings, all the joy, all the love, the inspiration that can bring. It's like a roller coaster ride, being a human. And in this attunement today and in our contemplation today, one of the central words is the word acceptance as a gift quality. So let's just begin, and I invite you, without trying to judge this, but just noticing, how much do you accept yourself as a human? We all know what human means, the vast goodness and badness of what a human can be. Where are you right now in your acceptance of being human? And just let's take a breath into that. And out. And just for maybe this next are ahead. Let go of our desire to fix ourselves or others. And soften into what's happening right now, where we find ourselves on this day. And where my contemplation of this word acceptance took me to this week is that it can be a really dark and difficult place, like a brick wall. So I'm going to bring to mind something you found difficult to accept. Perhaps it's a quality in a person that you love. Perhaps a quality of a person who is just in your life, but you might not necessarily love them. Perhaps it's something like illness or death or poverty. Let's bring something to mind that it's been quite a difficult thing for you to accept. And to join here together with each other, just knowing what it's like to reach that place of perhaps despair, with all our creativity, all our knowledge, all our wisdom even. There's situations we just cannot change. The hope is that this despair we meet can send us on an inner journey. And the fact we're all here, you may join us later, at some level you have realized that the only journey that can now be made, the only thing that can change, is yourself. Your perception, your reactions. And that this path, though you may not know it, could even bring you great bliss in the middle of chaos and suffering. And drop you into a place of compassion for humanity. And an almost detached universal love. So whether you can feel inklings of that, or it feels a million miles away, or you're right in that universal love, let's just take a moment to breathe into our heart space. And invite that experience into our lives. Place the hands over the heart. Tenderness. And then gently opening your eyes, your hands, a bit of a rub. So, let's talk about what is happening with the planets. So I'm going to do this presentation, try and make it visual so it's easier to understand, hopefully. Let's go back to the beginning. So, I don't use these words lightly, paradigm shift, but that is what we're in. It doesn't mean that every single person on this planet is going to get it or experience it, but there's definitely a huge potential for it. And the paradigm shift is into this quality of universal love. But the pathway to universal love is this gift of acceptance. And as I say, I was going to read actually one of Sally's husband's poems today. I haven't got time for it in here, but it took me to this place of how hard acceptance can actually be. And I think like one of the hardest things in my life is I had an adopted child for about 7 years. And with all my creativity and healing abilities and optimism, it took me about 2 years to kind of hit this brick wall that I was never going to be able to change this person whose behaviors and emotion and way of being was just so difficult for me to be with. And so that was probably one of my big moments of like meeting the despair of acceptance, and that's actually when I started to meditate. This is maybe about 10 years ago. I could see meditation as the only way I could get up in the morning and not feel like totally psychotic, you know. And so I started getting up at 5 every morning and meditating. And then there have been like other situations in my life, you know, around my dad had Parkinson's, and that was really hard to accept. And I could see even harder for my mom to accept. So that's why I kind of think acceptance, it sounds like a great word, doesn't it? Yeah, just accept things. But actually when you're an optimistic person and you may even be a healer, you know, you may have all these strategies, then reaching acceptance can take quite a long time, and it can be like a really dark place. So this pathway to universal love is not necessarily an easy one. And so 2 things going on this week. One is the spiraling energy of the shell, the spiraling of time. And the other thing that started coming to me this week is around the rose energy. We're going to be starting this Venus process in a couple of weeks. And Venus actually creates the shape of a rose in the heavens. I'll show you that when we begin that, and 5-pointed star. And we're going to be working with this geometry over 5 weeks, like encoding our own special algorithm. And this kind of geometry keeps coming into my mind, like it's very clear, it's very free from, it's almost quite detached, like free from deep emotional entanglement, which I often feel in. But I feel like the energy right now is trying to take us to this more geometric place. This piece of art actually embodies quite well, because it's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's cold, but it's quite detached in the energy, and that's what it sort of feels like is coming in. Okay, so this, let me just give the backdrop. So most of you probably know that Pluto moved into Aquarius a couple of months ago. And this was considered by many astrologers to be like a real doorway into the age of Aquarius. Pluto moves very slowly, so this is a huge kind of energy that has opened up. And alongside that, yesterday we had the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Gene Key 23, which is all about this energy of splitting apart and simplifying. So be interesting to see if anything happened to you yesterday or today of any significance, because it's a real kind of time of endings and beginnings, and things that have been part of your life potentially like disintegrating. But also a time that kind of acceptance is needed of where we are individually and where we are collectively, and this kind of inner journey being a possibility of how we might work with what is going on. Okay, so the first thing that is huge that has happened in the last few weeks, well, not the first thing, the third thing I should say, is that the planet Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, and he's like a great dissolving energy. If you imagine like the ocean, the impact it has on things, it dissolves things. And Neptune has just moved into Gene Key 25, and this Gene Key is a really important energy that moves from constriction, and especially around the heart, that feeling of ugh, to acceptance, which is what I've been talking about, to universal love. We're going to look at a seashell just now, and I always think that, like, how does the sea create all these shells and things? So it looks like an energy that's chaotic, the sea, but actually it's incredibly intelligent, and it's creating these amazing patterns, and it's a lot like space, basically. It's a lot like what space is doing to us. Okay, so the second thing that's, well, I should say fourth thing that's happening, is that Pluto, who's a very transformative planet, has entered Aquarius, but now has moved into Gene Key 41. And Gene Key 41 moves from fantasy to anticipation to emanation. So fantasy, it kind of feels very connected in a way to the acceptance thing, because it's like, as long as we're fantasizing about how we're going to make things better, but we haven't really got a real idea of how we're going to do it, then we're kind of in the state of fantasy. And then potentially we move into this anticipation and uniting, which is the emanating. Emanation is the uniting with the divine force of intelligence in the universe, or nature, you could say, God, whatever words you want to use, that through becoming one with this cosmic intelligence, we're able to get out of fantasy and into the possibility of real change. But the real change begins with inner alchemy. Okay, so Pluto also is the gateway to these trans-Neptunian objects that are really out there in our solar system. And all these objects, there's lots of them, they represent indigenous wisdom returning to our world. And I'm just going to talk about two here, which are Sedna and Salacia. So Sedna is an Inuit goddess from the northern, like Eskimo tribes, and she represents our uniqueness and independence, and she assists us in breaking our most calcified tribal patterns, especially around gender conditioning. So our own ancestral line is really important in the story. And if you find yourself feeling challenged, like a good question to ask is, what were my mother and grandmother like in the situation, or grandfather as well? Because so much of how we think is our own way of being, but actually it's really imprints of our ancestral line, and Sedna is helping us to break those. Then we have Salacia, and Salacia is all about recoding of the masculine and feminine patterning to increased sensitivity and respect. So this wonderful book by Veda Austin on the alchemy of salt and water came to me. Salacia means salt, and it's really fascinating about like the inner chemistry, how the inner chemistry of the body could change through salt and water, crystals, and like positive emotion and frequency being part of our recoding. So Salacia was a wife of Neptune, and she basically slapped him into shape because she wouldn't marry him while he was still being a brute. And so he really had to change in order for Salacia to say, yes, I will be with you. And part of that change was becoming kind of more sensitized, more respectful of her as a woman. Well, she was a mermaid, actually, a water nymph. But yeah, like many of these Greek gods, they just sort of go around raping women, and she was having none of it. So she was quite a transformative power, and she's very kind of active in what's going on at the moment. Okay, so part of this movement towards universal love is this breaking of patterns, and it might seem quite paradoxical because it's like, in order to break the patterns, sometimes we have to kind of upset people. So we might not come across as being that loving, but it's a kind of detached love, this universal love. And now, not all of you will have come across the Dream Arc, which is the latest kind of transmission of the gene keys, but this animal, the hyena, has come in, and it's just so perfect for what I've been thinking about and talking about. So hyena is the fearless irreverence towards external authority. In other words, this animal is asking us to listen to our inner authority and almost like laugh at outer authority. And that, by the way, could include concepts of God, government, your partner, if you think the masculine is more important than you are. So this external authority, that's a good question. Who are your external authorities that you are listening to, and when do you ignore your internal authority? which is often really linked also to our intuition. So I'm going to read this from Hyena because I think it's brilliant. But do not tarry too long with us, for we will in time overpower your psyche with our raw vitality. We come only when you need a burst of energy to break through a blockage. Where in your life do you need to tear open a stubborn, calcified pattern? We are the great biters, biting through, as your book says. So go crush the resistance within your own psyche. Rebel against all that tries to be too sanctimonious or hypocritical. We detest hypocrisy. We eat hypocrites for breakfast. Ha ha ha. So I don't know if you've ever heard hyenas, but they laugh. So, and that's where the ha 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 comes from. So remember this about this kind of quite, it's almost like the universe, Sedna especially, is inviting us to be quite like fierce in our capacity to change things that are problematic right now. So this whole thing about calcified patterns is interesting as well, because let me show you the next picture. So over last weekend I went on this is an art representation of the phoenix bird in the Glastonbury terrestrial zodiac, which is quite famous. There's quite a lot of it on it online if you're more interested. And this woman called Catherine Maltwood in 1934 perceived this kind of temple of stars, a terrestrial zodiac, in which Aquarius is a phoenix bird, but also has the qualities of pelican pecking out its chest to feed its young. And there's a red stream. It has lots of iron in it. It's considered a very sacred stream at the Chalice Well, and this is the point at which the pelican is pecking its breast, and this is a very potent symbol of universal love in Christianity. And the phoenix bird is a very powerful symbol of alchemy, of, you know, being dead to being alive, basically. So I did this walk, which was really powerful, and on this walk at the grave of this very important woman called Dion Fortune, who was a priestess in the 1900s. I picked up the shell, and then inside it was a snail. And it felt like it had a really powerful message around, like the snail representing living time with its spiral. So we're here on Earth, and even though we have this experience of living in linear time, through our right brain, which is what we're trying to work with more and more, we're actually in spiraling time. Things are coming round again and again in a holographic way, and we have the capacity to affect change in that holographic pattern. And then the snail is inside these calcified patterns of time. And this was fascinating to me, like the ocean created the shell shape. Like, how did it do that? You know, it's like a miracle. But it was, what it was speaking to me about is these calcified patterns that we have as humans. And this is what is breaking down now, is these calcified patterns. And the patterns are within us. They're within our own DNA and our ancestral DNA. And so we can be the breakers down of these calcified patterns. Okay, so another big background story is that in human design and gene keys, it's more than a prophecy really, because this is a kind of changeover in cyclical energies, that we've been in what's called the cross of planning for the last 500 years, and in 2027 we switched to the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So what was interesting to me is that Catherine Maltwood, all the way back then in 1934, perceived Aquarius as a phoenix bird, which is quite unusual because normally Aquarius is the water bearer, a male or female pouring the water. So that kind of caught my attention. Many people see Catherine Maltwood as being very prophetic in this perceived temple of the stars. And you get them in other countries as well. I know that there's one in New Zealand. I don't know. You could maybe tell me if there's any in your countries. Okay, so the cross, so we're going from the cross of planning. The cross of planning has, did I put this down? I'm sure I put it down. I know that one thing that's very interesting is our Tara, who is here and is the person who set up Troll Tribe, has the cross of planning. Oh, here it is. I've put it at the bottom. So the cross of planning has these gene keys in it. The 40, which is about divine, what's it called? Divine surrender. The 37 is tenderness. The 16th is mastery, and the 9th is invincibility. So this is the energy that we have been in the industrial age, with all of our revolutions in technology, and we're kind of, as we know, we're reaching this end where we're on the brink of we are in environmental disaster. We're on the brink of it. But this is also this transitional crossover to the sleeping phoenix, which is a much more right-brained, indigenous way of being. And it's really good Tara has the cross of planning, because as the cross of planning breaks down as the background, the people who hold this cross are going to have the ability to kind of plan through the breakdown very well. So it's good to know her on that front, and you may have the cross of planning yourself. So the cross of the sleeping phoenix has these gene keys. The 55 and the 59, I know at least one of you out there has those too, and the 20 and the 34. Now the 55 and the 59 are hugely important in the field of relationships, because they're about transparency and intimacy and freedom, and they're about pushing us out of a state of victimization into an empowered state of freedom, of inner freedom. And then we also have the 34 is all about majesty, and the 20 is about presence. So the energies are really also asking us to stop forcing things. Anything we're forcing is likely to backfire on us at this time. The other wonderful thing is that Sedna, who I've talked about already, in June will move into Gemini and into this gene key 20, where that kind of presence will become a much stronger energy for all of us. But what we're being trained now is that when you use force, it's likely to backfire on you, and there's better ways to bring about the changes that you want through this inner alchemy than trying to force change in the outside world. So it brings me to how I just realized we were on such a perfect pathway to transmute the chaos ahead. This kind of crystalline vision I've been having is all about like the integrity of the body. If we imagine the body like a building, having inner integrity and clarity like a diamond kind of energy, and the emotional pressure of the times is pushing us into this diamond-like quality, and also pushing us into this more detached quality. So it's detached, but it's also open-hearted. So it's like it's not cutting off from people. It's almost like being able to see what's unfolding without reacting in a problematic way. So we're going to be beginning this, creating this 5-pointed inner geometry of the rose. We begin it on the 6th of May, and we'll be doing it until the 3rd of June, when the next Venus star point is. And I will explain all that as we go along. I'm not going to overload you with any more. So this is what I've been kind of experiencing all week. And then what was amazing is my partner Adam has been reading this book called Rose Windows by Peyton Cowan. We're going to France for 3 weeks in June, and part of what we're going to do is explore Gothic cathedrals. And so he said, oh, I've made some notes of things I want to read you from the Rose Window. And it was, well, I've done some of the quotes because I'm like, oh my God, it's like we're on the same page, even though we haven't even been talking about this to each other. It was like so amazing. Okay, so this is one of these rose windows, just to give you an idea of what I mean by rose windows. They're huge. And this is in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And you get these rose windows all over Europe, and actually they're associated with the Renaissance, which is very much connected to Gene Key 16 energy. And that mastery, like suddenly you get this culture of mastery of art and music, incredible uplifting of humanity suddenly occurs in this period. And part of these cathedrals, according to this book, is they bring about, and it actually uses the word detachment, and a transcendent like experience, like you could almost just go into this geometry yourself. So at this one, in the center is the Mother Mary, and I'm going to show you these two. So this is another Mother Mary from another window, and she's actually holding out a rose in her hand here. You can see that is a rose there. And this one here has this 9-pillared ladder, and this appears in quite a few of statues and rose windows. And this is Sophia, who is feminine wisdom. So I'm going to read you what the book said about all of this, because it was just like, oh my God. I nearly fell off of my chair. So at Laon and Chartres, the 7 arts taught in the cathedral schools, and that's this this ladder is these 7 arts plus 2 more of medicine and architecture that aren't mentioned here. So The 7 arts taught in cathedral schools were music, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, dialectic, logic, and grammar. In this rose, they are joined by medicine, and they are all personified as women surrounding philosophy. Philosophy is the personified divine wisdom, Hagia Sophia, Mother Mary, and Venus. So that was just like, oh my God. So that was kind of interesting that even, you know, in this quite male-dominated age, that these arts were specifically connected to women, and the divine feminine wisdom, and Venus rules arts and beauty and all of that. So when we go diving into Venus, what Venus will do is activate these beautiful things inside ourselves. Some of these are quite interesting as well, because they're not things we traditionally associate with women now, or girls, like logic, astronomy, geometry, arithmetic. But actually in the ancient tradition of the priestesses and astronomers, these gifts of mathematics were all part of a feminine wisdom. So I find that really fascinating as well. And it kind of shows how even that is conditioning, you know, that women aren't good at maths and all of that. I mean, I wasn't actually good at maths, but I am good at astrology, and that is a form of geometry and mathematics. So it kind of, you know, maybe it's about finding your niche in these things. So this is another quote. The universe is manifested in the form of every rose window, the concentric layers of which echo the spheres containing the sun, moon, planets, and stars. In the west rose of Notre Dame de Paris, the spheres contain all the zodiac, time, the vices and virtues, and the prophets surrounding the Virgin Mary. And final one, the temple of the spirit is seen within Revelation as being built within every man, but every woman in our case. So it felt like a confirmation of this idea of building inner geometry through this 5-pointed star, essentially. The Vesuvian Woman. We are going to become Vesuvian women. That is the plan. Okay, I think that's the end. Yes, it is. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a useful kind of backdrop to like what's being said in astrology and the gene keys. Human design is kind of connected to the gene keys as well, precedes the gene keys, and the I Ching actually precedes both of those. So the gene keys and human design are built on the architecture of the I Ching from ancient China. So this understanding of the patterns of the universe is very ancient, but it's more in modern times that we realize that it's a mirror of how our own DNA works. And so it's very powerful, all this work we're doing, because we can tune in very specifically to our own inner being. We all have our own algorithm in all of this as well. So, oh my God, I've been talking for ages. So I'm going to pause the recording now and just see if there's any questions or